Hi, we are Marilyn and Sean. This year, we'll be starting our journey from Singapore all the way to the tip of Europe and maybe beyond by land and sea. We'll be using this channel to log our trip and memories as we wander from the southern tip of Asia all the way to Spain. We will be letting go of the stability and security Singapore has provided as we seek to live an alternative lifestyle and to explore what the world has to offer. It is our dream to push towards building our own lives before we hit our 30s. We will be primarily talking about how we prepare for the trip in terms of managing finances and social relations. As we were asked by lots of our friends on how we do our planning, we will likely be making another video on practical tips discussing this. We also talked more about the reasons why we are leaving Singapore in our video here. The link is also provided in the description below. With that, let's get started!
So we have actually been planning for this trip for more than 3 years, and both of us will be working along the trip. So both of us, in that sense, we are holding 9 to 5 jobs but modified. So for me, I'm working from Mondays to Thursdays, Thursdays being half days. And
for me, I was working a 5-day work week and I converted to a 3-day work week instead.
So in that sense, we are both fortunate to have met bosses that are really understanding in terms of what we want, and then at the same time they respect our decision to go for this trip. So really the ball is in our court to prove to them and to ourselves that we have the capabilities to do what we are supposed to do for our regular jobs while going for our trip.
We actually prepared ourselves to see if we can manage during some of the pilot runs that we did last year in Philippines and Vietnam. So during these trips, we tracked our expenses extremely closely in order to gauge the spending in these countries. And also the additional time that we will be having during our trip, we will be spending them on side hustles like starting to learn how to swing trade, starting our own projects, and also trying to see if we can build more royalty or commission based side income so that these incomes come in a little bit more passively. Then at the same time, Marilyn is also trying to sell her small shade at local cafes or craft fairs whenever that we can find them. And I think the good thing about starting from the tip of Southeast Asia is that we have time to actually let this side income grow. And then progressively, things will get more expensive as we near Europe, but we have time to prepare for that.
So we plan to live our lives minimally, and this will mean lower expenses. We don't plan to spend unless absolutely necessary, and we will only spend on perishables, people, and essentials that we will bring along for this trip. We will save on accommodations and food, but not on activities. Accommodations to us is just a place to sleep and rest, and our only requirement is safety, hygiene, location, and a decent Wi-Fi for work. However, we are still prepared as we bought a fee to bring along with us. Location is important to us as it will determine our spending on transport, and as for food, our priority will be to live like a local and find where locals are eating at, which are usually less expensive. So this will also provide us with a more authentic experience and taste, and we'll make sure to avoid sketching looking places as we do not want to fall sick. As for activities, as we are only there once, we will make full use of our time. That said, we won't line our itinerary fully packed as it will be exhausting and there's no point if we do not enjoy ourselves. So this can be controlled and budgeted for.
It is common for Singaporeans to still stay with our parents till we hit our 30s, and the same applies for us. Then it also doesn't really make much financial sense for us to rent our own units because Singapore is one of the most expensive cities to stay in the world. Then as for myself, I am an only child, so can you imagine telling my parents that I'm going for this trip that I don't know where the end is? Yeah, it's not easy to break it to them.
I actually went for frequent solo trips across Asia as well as Europe. So I stayed in Europe for 7 months, in Delft, the Netherlands, for an exchange program that I had in school. It also helped to acclimatize my parents to not having me at home and that I will always be gone for small trips like that. And I guess in that sense it built their trust in my ability to take care of myself, but it's progressive, it's one step at a time. And it also helped build my own yearning for independence and to help me decide if this is really what I want in my life. So these trips really built my love for exploration, satiating my inner curiosity about others' perspectives, and as a creative, I really enjoy the discovery process when thinking from alternative perspectives, and so my interest naturally pivoted to what I can learn and uncover if I grew up in another culture and having another worldview. And that also helped me to realize how tiny my own perspective is and will be if I really continue staying in Singapore. So this process gently nudged them from this trip being a huge shocker if I told them to, oh, it kind of makes sense that he will want to do this. And with that, it still have to make preparations to ensure that it can be as informed of my condition and my state as we roam around the world. And things like nightly calls, quarterly sponsored tickets to visit us in whichever country we are in. So I think this also serves as an opportunity for them to leave Singapore, because for my family, we grew up in a low to mid income family, and family trips are really rare and usually going to neighboring countries like Malaysia. So actually I can kind of tell that they have the desire to travel and see more of the world, but really we are stopped by our financial abilities. So now that I have the ability to earn money for myself, I also want to be able to provide for them for more of these trips. So we want to use this as an opportunity for them to fly and explore more rather than be trapped within our tiny island state. And I think it's also a huge opportunity for my family to bond further.
Honestly, I think it's sad to admit, but I only realized this after my army and the exchange, that prolonged separations like this actually make our interactions a lot gentler by bringing out the best and most patient versions of ourselves. And I think it's also a huge reminder for us to not take our familiar relations for granted.
So I'm the baby of the family, as I'm the youngest out of 4 kids. I grew up very sheltered and pampered, as things were always taken care for me. I want to be more independent, even though it is scary, and experience living away from home and being on our own. It was a shocker to my parents, as it doesn't seem like something I'll do, but the more I talked about it and our plans, the more real it became. Also, as we grow up, our friendship circles become smaller, and both of us are extremely introverted by nature, and we can count with one hand those that we consider close friends. Each and every one of them we know that we can trust and rely on for help in Singapore, and vice versa. We also had numerous catch-ups and chats before leaving the country, with promises to meet during our annual return to Singapore. We're excited to see who we can meet along the way, as we had during our previous pilot trips to Vietnam and Philippines.
Finally, let's talk about the trip. Our plan is to travel by land and sea all the way to the tip of Europe, and we only plan to take flights during our annual return to Singapore during Chinese New Year. We are Chinese Singaporeans at the end of the day, and Chinese New Year is a time of familial reunions no matter where you are in the world, and it's also a promise that we plan to keep to our parents. Why no flights? No, we're not on a green mission, but honestly it does sound cool on video. I think it's just romantic to be able to see how the world is connected, not just digitally, but physically. Right, so let me steal a line from Witcher Season 3. I think countries are essentially lines where people and their culture assign meaning to. So we hope to remove those lines and see how the lands are actually connected. And I think on top of that, when on planes, to me it just seems like we have magically teleported from one location to the other. We don't see the process, we don't see the people, we don't see the culture, and all that you see are the clouds and the sky. It is just a huge waste to have all of this beauty just pass you by. And possibly also because I grew up fascinated by fantasy tales and books of adventure like Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Earthsea, etc, where people are traveling across the land on horseback, having adventures, so on and so forth. So I really won't mind, but I doubt we can find like a proper horse to ride out of Singapore. Within a lot of these tales and movies and books, we see a lot of beautiful shots of the scenery and surrounding landscapes, not exactly office buildings and computer screens, and we feel that this trip is really our portal to access these experiences in real life. So we've actually divided the trips into legs so that it's more manageable, and I think it's easier for us to process. For the first leg of the journey, we'll be covering mainly Southeast Asia as well as South China. The countries that we will be going through would be Malaysia, Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, as well as South China. So South China would be areas like Kunming, Nanning, Shenzhen, Macau, so on and so forth, before flying back to Singapore to celebrate Chinese New Year, taking our first flight. We plan to stay in each country until the tourist visa expires, and in that sense we are lucky to be holding a Singaporean passport because we have visa exemptions in most countries. As for leg 2 of the journey, we are mainly exploring East Asia. We'll be flying back to where we left off, which is in South China. So some of the locations that we're looking at traveling through would be Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, Mongolia, and of course different locations in China where we will be using the other countries or locations as visa runs. So subsequently, we kind of imagined that leg 2 would take an entirety of about a single year before we fly back to Singapore to celebrate our second Chinese New Year. As for leg 3 of the journey, we're looking at covering between Asia and Europe. And I guess as of now, we don't really have a solid plan for that yet, because as we know, there's a lot of geographical tension between the nations that's within this area. We will just adapt to the world as it changes. Some of the viable routes that we're looking at right now could be possibly through the Trans-Siberian Railway. We'll be traveling from Beijing all the way to St. Petersburg and perhaps to Finland. So that's one. Or two, we could take the ancient Silk Road, the road in which the ancient Chinese used for trade with Europe. So that could be our second option. Or three, we could go through the Himalayan mountain ranges through countries like India, Nepal, Bhutan, so on and so forth, slowly traveling our way westwards towards the Middle East. And after the Middle East, of course, then we will arrive in Europe. And finally, we reach leg 4. So we have finally reached our destination in Europe. And honestly, as of now, we don't really have a solid plan for that yet as well, because it really depended on which route that we choose to take for route 3. But of course, in Europe, we are planning to travel around the entire region, eventually reach Spain. And I suppose from there we will see whether or not we want to travel southwards towards Africa, but we will see when the time comes.
Many of our friends call us brave and courageous, but there's also friends who describe this plan of ours as like a dream life, semi-retirement and the likes. But I think as mentioned in our last video, it really boils back down to what we prioritize at the end of the day, because I think in Singapore we really prioritize security, stability and things like that, right? So as long as we know what we prioritize, we can always build our world around it.
Yeah, so it's progressive and definitely not easy. There'll be numerous struggles and obstacles along the way, such as finances, social relations, careers, and our prior dreams. So eventually, we are still here, and this is how we plan to live our lives.
Yep, and peace. My hair's a mess.